No, they can start. I'm not.
Oh, Melanie and Mate, you're doing it again. They always do this.
Sorry.
You guys are always talking when you think the video, the thing is on mute.
Yeah, sorry, we were just having
Put yourselves on mute so we don't hear your arguments. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, we're putting you on mute now.
Okay, awesome. Okay, cool. I'm going to start. Thank you very much to everybody for joining. Just a few tips like the last time. Before we get into the introductions. Can we please do questions on the chat section of the video? You know, and if you really, really want to say something, then you can write in the chat that you really, really want to engage with us, and we can allow that. But preferably, if you can just do write your questions in the chat, that would be awesome. And then the second thing, can I ask that everybody keeps themselves on mute? You can put your video on if you want, but preferably not, because we are going to keep our video on, myself and the panel, so that you know, there's ease of connectivity. And then the last thing that I just need to mention, please be aware that we are recording the session, so you know, let's keep it tidy. Okay, so I just want to introduce my panel before we start. On my screen, I'm looking at Molebogeng Molwabi. Molebogeng is a business owner. She owns a recruitment agency called Boipelo 360. It is transitioning into the Talent Hive very soon, so look out for her. Lebo, do you want to say hi? Lebo's on mute.
Sorry. Hi, everyone. Yeah, as Lebo said, I'm Lebo, Molebogeng, for ease of reference. Some people call me Lebogang, so it's Molebogeng. Lebo Masilela is Lebogang. I own, as Lebo mentioned, I own Boipelo 360. Prior to going into recruitment, I was employed at AngloGold. I started my career in HR at AngloGold, and I stayed on the mines for about 2 years and moved on to head office. And then I was introduced to this wonderful industry, advertising, which has become my love and my passion. I went to Ogilvy from AngloGold, stayed there for some time, and then realized that, you know, recruitment is really what I enjoy. And at the time I was offered roles at the then Accenture. I think now, what was Accenture called then? Yeah, Accenture. Anderson Consulting, yes. Yeah, and then, yes, and Investec, and I opted to go to Investec. I suppose Investec spoke to me more because of like their entrepreneurial culture, and I suppose this is what nurtured me to transition to becoming an entrepreneur. And then I started Boipelo 360 in the year 2000, many moons ago. And since then, I have like gone back and forth between recruitment and doing HR consulting for small to medium enterprises. And it's funny because the panel that we have here today have at some point been candidates and clients of mine. And that's how I know all three of them. And yes, that's me in the nutshell. We do recruitment, executive search, and HR consulting.
And I think it's not just the panel, it's also people on the call, eh?
Yes. Yes.
The next person that I want to introduce on my screen is Zani Mashinini, who is now currently at ABSA as the Group Talent Manager, ne? So do you want to take us through who you are?
Thanks, Lebu, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really great to be here. So thank you, Lebu, for inviting me, and always a pleasure to be with Lebu and Tash as well. I've been in HR, 20 odd years, probably about 22 years. I've done, you know, different HR roles. I've seen, you know, worked in different industries, both in South Africa and the United Kingdom. Currently, I look after the talent management portfolio at ABSA, based in the group function. And that is across the different countries that we operate in. My focus these days is on executive coaching. So I've done my qualification through the Wits Business School, and also did industrial psychology as well. So I now position myself as a coach as well as an HR executive. So very happy to contribute this afternoon.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to hear all your contributions. And Natasha Mulanda is currently, what's your position again? She's working at the Avidity Group, and you are the people.
The head of the people division, yes. Let's just leave it at that. It's a whole mouthful story.
No.
Hi everybody. So I'm Natasha, and I head the people solutions for Avidity Group currently. Avidity Group is a customer experience business. And so in designing customer experiences, we focus as well on what it is a people solution would look like to deliver a awesome customer experience. And so that's the business that I'm in. I run, or the division that I run within the organization. My background, sure, I am a scientist actually. So I level found this out in our prep for this call or this webinar, that my undergraduate degree is in genetics. And I've had a career in HR all along. I've worked in multinationals as well as in small, medium enterprises and in some creative industry businesses. So businesses that support the advertising industry as well. And I guess for me, a passion in HR is the support that HR gives to business, and how it is HR actually is a strategic function to business, and what that means. And so I am critical, sometimes overly critical, of HR professionals in the way it is they dispense with their responsibility to business, and how it is we hold ourselves accountable to our business partnering responsibilities. So that's passion for me. I love people. I love them from their genetics all the way to their behavior. And so my approach is very analytical and data-based, and very step-by-step through it. And I hope you get some value from our conversation today. So thanks for having me, Liv.
So thank you very much, guys. So, you know, these are, just to give you context, these are people that are my go-to people in my network of HR, and there's a wide network. And I wanted to bring them on because they are the people that I know will talk about HR, not just intellectually, but they will also delve, because they've got a passion for it. They will talk from the heart as well. And I hope you can connect with that, because the brief that I gave to them is, I don't want this to just be a webinar where we talk acronyms and HR jargon and, you know, information that people are not going to understand. I want us to be able to touch the mind and of all the people on board, because ultimately what we're doing is we're trying to educate our industry on HR, the importance of HR, and what expectations can the head of an agency have, or the HR people can have. So just start off, if you were on the last webinar, we specifically spoke about the importance of HR and not. So that was a really, really nice, robust discussion on the small wins and some big wins that HR has achieved in big and small organizations. And I thought the next step then would be to come in and just share with everybody on the call, or anyone who's interested, what impact business HR has on business. And, you know, I think in the olden days when HR started, it was personnel management, where the HR person was sitting in a corner somewhere in some building with you know, inside an office maybe, or with dividers around them, you know, those cushion ones, the gray cushion ones that you get at government. And the only thing you would do is manage leave pay. I mean, your leave management. And then people would come and cry on your shoulder if they had an issue or a problem. And then that was the ultimate of your job. If you could do that, then you were fantastic. HR has really, really, really transformed over the years. And today we are looking at situations where if you're not sitting at an exco or a board table, there is a problem, right? So we're going to, first of all, talk about empower the people on the call who are business owners on what exactly that they need to know or expect from HR people and the type of competencies that they can expect from HR people. We're also going to delve into measurements. So how do you measure success from the initiatives that are driven by HR? And then we're actually going to go into the different initiatives that HR people are expected to perform in our day and age for business to thrive. So we'll try to keep it very, I don't want to say low level because we do not have low level people on this call, but I do want to keep it conversational. So I have asked my panel to keep acronyms to an absolute minimum so that everybody's on the same page as us. Guys, if we do throw in acronyms, because this is our everyday language, please just jot it down on the comments, I don't understand what you mean, and we'll come back and we'll explain it. And that's the point of this exercise, so that everybody walks out with some understanding or a hell of a lot of understanding of HR and what we have to offer. So just to kick off, I think the best way that I thought we could approach this is to look at the employee life cycle. So we're going to start off with attraction. We're going to look at induction and onboarding. We're going to look at development within an organization. We're going to look at engagement, reward and recognition, and then lastly, exit management. But we're going to look at each of them in detail, some detail, not all detail, because there's a hell of a lot of stuff. There's a hell of a lot of laws and acts that govern how we do things. We're not going to touch on them today. I don't think today is the day. I think today we're just trying to get people excited and enticed around what we do. So, Natasha, I think, so I'm going to start the first question with you. And I want us to talk about HR and why we should be interested in the business strategy. So usually, like I said, HR is still, in some organizations, still that lady or that old woman in the corner there sitting doing something. Yeah. And when you ask about the business, and then when you ask about the business strategy, they're like, "What are you doing with the business strategy?" So I'd like you to explain to us why we in HR, as HR practitioners in today's world, need the business strategy and why it's important.
So I think to start, Liz, the return on investment that you get from people. So your business strategy is essentially only as good as the execution. And you could write the most amazing strategy, and unless you have the people, the processes, and the systems in place to deliver and execute against that strategy, that's what it's going to remain. It's going to remain a beautifully written piece of work. And so having a people plan that actually speaks to the goals of your business is absolutely critical for you achieving the business goal. The other reason is that almost 60% of your direct cost as a business owner is in people. And if you are not able to account effectively for that return on investment, you are investing 60% of your business costs into people, and you are not strategically managing it in the same way that you manage any of the other things. So you don't manage it the same way you're managing your cash flow. You're not looking at the return on investment on that. So having a people plan that links directly into your business strategy is going to give you the return on investment for what it is you're investing in those people. And I think that's the most succinct way that I can explain to you or the importance of having HR sitting at the business table, is to hold accountable people for that 60% investment that you're making.
Thank you very much for that. I absolutely agree with you. Now, after you've said that, I'm sure there is some questions, and I can only think that the types of questions that you would ask as well. How do you know then that you're getting the right person in who can fully understand the concept that you've just explained to us? Dani, my next question is to you. For the business owners and the people who are running agency on the call, are you able to explain to them what types of competencies an HR person needs in order for them to fully understand what Natasha has explained and then to execute when they get into the organization?
Yeah. Thanks, Lebo, and thanks, Natasha. I think it's great to position the evolution of HR, because if we don't position the evolution, we won't understand why we've had so many different experiences. But you'll remember, historically, to be a value-adding HR professional, you had to be an SME, you know, a technical expert in HR, and that was sufficient. The rest was pretty much left to chance. But what we're finding now, that's not enough, Lebo, and I think we had a good debate with Natasha on this one, is it's no longer enough to just be technically, you know, savvy in your own field as an HR professional. You now have to be able to do a lot more than that. So if you're a CEO, you should actually be interrogating whether this individual is able to relate to your business. So business knowledge is starting to be part of the list of competencies that we want to see in HR professionals, to be able to do the things that Natasha was speaking about. So I love the combination that Natasha has. She's done a non-HR qualification, but she's had the experience, so she's got a great combination. And it makes it much easier for people like her to be able to partner effectively with businesses at different levels. So now we're starting to see that competencies like influencing, being able to convince and articulate with social confidence what stand a company should take in terms of the context of the business strategy. You're wanting to start to see that your HR professional can participate in those debates at the highest level, and obviously at all levels. You're also wanting to see that your HR professionals can solve problems. Can they apply their theory and provide a CEO with insights to find the solutions to those problems? So yes, you'll find that the SME knowledge is very important, because they can use that to apply some of the tools that they need to, but they need to contextualize it. So for me, business acumen, knowledge of the business, cannot underestimate that. And I think other competencies is around being able to seize opportunities. The entrepreneurial aspects are important. So being able to see, actually, this is how our business can win. That's why we need these types of people. So when you're hiring, you can integrate that. You're not just hiring people because they sound good, they've got great experience. You're actually saying, I'm hiring it for the relevance of our business strategy. That's why those practices become quite important to customize. You're also wanting to see that your HR professionals are able to develop strategy. They are conceptual thinkers, because then you're getting that you can do the ROI conversations, because you don't want people to be robotic in their approaches. You know, that's why they say we can get the robots to do the robotic stuff. But when you're starting to hire humans, you're wanting them to do the human stuff. So look for the human stuff. And then I think Natasha touched on this. Insights is so important. I can't emphasize how important it is to actually integrate the ability to apply insights to decision making. So we have found historically, it was there. I mean, I worked with dashboards as part of my junior time in HR, but we're now talking data science, algorithms, all of that, which is fantastic, because it's showing that we are progressive in our industry. So I would look for those types of competencies. And the last one, I want to emphasize it even more, the ability to use insights to influence CEOs, business leaders, to be able to make the right decisions for their business.
Thank you very much, Zani. You touched very much on looking for the right person for the right role. And Lebo, I know my next question is to you. I know that with your recruitment background, there's a lot of headhunting that you do. However, there is also something called strategic resourcing. Can you take us through that and the differences between your strategic resourcing your recruitment, and then your headhunting. What is the difference with that?
Okay, thanks, Liz. So with strategic resourcing, it really is a key part of strategic human resources management, because what you're then doing is that you're matching your talent pool to the strategic and operational requirements of the organization to ensure that like people are being fully utilized and optimally as resources within your organization. So it can be said that, you know, with that human resources plays a vital role in filling the gap of people resources needs in an organization through a process of strategic resourcing. And when you start focusing on being strategic, you're looking at like a human resources planning. You
Is Lebo hanging?
It looks like it, yeah.
Okay. Would any of you like to complete that? Sorry, while we wait for her connectivity to normalize. Would you like to go into strategic resourcing? Zani, I think maybe you can finish it off because you started off the conversation on actually having the right person in the right role at the right time to be able to deliver on strategy.
the business
So,
strategy, and you say, these are the resources that we're going to be requiring going forward. And that's the start. And then you clarify at which stages in the organization required to meet the future needs that are then going to.
We did lose Lebo. So she'll come back and she'll comment a bit later again. I think.
okay.
But
Oh, sorry.
Lebo, go ahead. Your backup. Well done.
Yes, I just like moved on to like my backup network like quickly, but clearly it wasn't like quick enough. So I'm not quite sure how far I got, but I went on to talking about like the difference between recruiting and headhunting. How far did, I'm so sorry guys, apologies. I've just
Start from the beginning. Start from the beginning.
Okay, so just to get about strategic resourcing and what the benefits are. So when you've got your business strategy, you need to link your people resources to what the strategy is. So you can't execute your strategy without people that have to ensure that the strategy is executed. So for one, your HR person needs to do the actual planning, where you look at the goals and objectives, when they need to be reached, and whether those resources will be available at that time. That's one. And as part of like your entire recruitment process, in order to be able to attract those resources, you need to make sure that like your EVP or your employee value proposition speaks to those people that you want to attract or retain within your organization. That's the second part. And then thirdly, you need to have like a resourcing plan as an HR manager. And what a resourcing plan then does for you is that you're able to look within your organization and say, these are the skills that we have that are filling certain roles at the moment. But with, let's say, business growth, like in advertising, when you know that you're pitching on a business and you're going to be winning, or you hope to win an account at a certain point in the year, you then need to ensure that when that pitch goes through and when you've got resources that are available that are going to be able to execute business for the client. Somebody on mute. So in terms of your resource.
I'm coming.
Sorry, Lebs, let me just manage this. Sorry, can everyone please put themselves on mute?
Okay.
Go ahead, Leb, sorry.
So with your resourcing plans, then you look at your organization, and if there aren't resources or if there are not enough people to be able to fill what those requirements are going to be, then you need to make plans to make sure that when that account lands, you are going to have people available to fill those positions, and you need to know where you will be able to find those people in a short space of time. That's why, like, you know, it's so important to build relationships with candidates and know where they are at any given time in their careers, so that when it comes time and you know that here it is, we've won, let's say, the Vodacom account, and I know somebody who's got retail experience and they are ripe for the picking, then you're able to go and then speak to that person to say, here's an opportunity that has come up. But over and above that, as an HR person, you then need to have retention plans, because, you know, I think this is where some organizations fail, and especially—
Wait, Lebo, wait. You're going into stuff now. We'll get there. Take it easy.
Yeah.
Take it
Yeah.
one step at a time.
Okay, but
There's
this
so
was
much
like
that you said that.
in terms of strategic planning for resources.
Okay.
But like, to go back to your question about, you know,
Yeah.
the difference between using a recruiter and a headhunting service. So recruiting and headhunting, a lot of times are used interchangeably, but there's a distinct difference. And the primary difference is that recruiters will pull from a list of interested job seekers. So you place an ad, people respond, or you've got a database, you go to that database and then you plug in the people as positions are filled. While headhunters, or what we would call executive search companies or individuals, they will pursue any professional within the experience and the qualifications that are required for a position. So the benefits of using one over the other: headhunters have the advantage over recruiters in that they recruit from the entire talent market, including passive job seekers. So they don't just like depend on people that are applying or people that are responding to job specs. So they will take a job description and say, okay, let me just search the market and see who is there that would be like a perfect fit for this role. Then it becomes the role of that headhunter to go sell the position to a candidate, and you sell, and that's why, you know, HR people, recruiters, headhunters are really in essence salespeople, because you need to sell an organization, you need to sell a role. So this is the difference then with like headhunters. Then they go direct, they go to your competitors, and the chances of getting like a perfect fit is increased. But where it's actually more pivotal is if when you have a confidential search that you need done, where you know that I will be winning this account, so I need to have these people in place, but I don't want it known that we've won the account. So then the confidentiality then is kept throughout that process. So that's basically the difference between the two, that, you know, one is a lot more targeted, and then the other one is just like based on what is available in the market at that point. Is Lebo still with us?
Yeah, she's probably also switching with network.
Yes.
But then Lebo, I thought
Thank you very much. You're going into other things. We'll get there. We'll get there. I know it's exciting.
Wendy, how's it? I'm fine, thanks. Sorry, just a sec.
Okay, so Liz, are you there?
Just to get into it, I am here, yeah.
Okay.
So, Lebo, in your very long message, you mentioned EVP, Employee Value Proposition. Please, can you take us through that briefly? Take us through that and help us understand what the value of an organization having an EVP is. Because you look at our agencies, we're all striving for the same thing. We're all pitching on similar or the same clients. So how do we position ourselves differently from other agencies in order for us to attract the right people within our organization?
Oh, you're on mute, Lebo.
Did you hear me?
Yeah, okay, can you hear me? Yes. So EVP refers to Employee Value Proposition. That's what EVP is. And it refers to the unique benefits an employee of a company reaps in exchange for the skills that they offer. So it really basically is what's in it for the candidate. So as a company, when you're trying to get top talent, you need to make sure that what you're selling is not just that I'm going to pay you, because a lot of people focus on the money aspect of it, but it's so much broader. I've identified like the 5 main areas that you would look at with EVP. So it's like your pay. And when you're talking about pay, you're talking about your basic salary, the incentives that you may offer, and then what is important and something that probably we'll talk about at a later stage is how transparent the pay process is, which then would be linking to job grading and salary benchmarking. And then the second element would be your benefits. And your benefits could be your typical ones like pension, provident, medical aid. Then you go into like things like leave, annual leave. How many days leave are you offering your people? Does it differ depending on your seniority within the organization? And something that was trending on Twitter recently with regards to Vodacom is their paid parental leave. So that's part of like their EVP, where now everybody qualifies for that initial 4 months parental leave. So now we know that men, all you need to do is just like pop the baby, and your husband or your partner will then can then as well take care of the baby for those 4 months while you go back to work when you're ready to. And then the third part is just like in terms of the career. People are now looking at things differently. It's not just about moving from one employer to the other. When I go join this employer, what am I going to get in terms of my career? So a lot of times when people join, they're already looking for their next job because they know exactly what they intend to gain with your organization. So in terms of my career, are there growth prospects? Is there employment security? Is there training and development? And then fourthly, the work content. Is there variety? Is there a challenge? Am I allowed a certain level of autonomy? What does the structure look like? Do I get regular feedback? And am I making an impact in the organization and the communities around me? And then lastly, it's like an affiliation. And this one is just like great in terms of like this industry, because reputation and ranking is like right there at the top. How many awards is the agency winning? And where do they rank in terms of like, you know, the top 5 agencies? And then how is the work environment? How's the office environment? What sort of like CSI programs are companies aligned to? Am I going to be able to make an impact if I'm passionate about breast cancer? Do we do something with regards to breast cancer within that organization? And lastly, but not, you know, least important is the culture. Does the culture, the mission and the values, do they talk to who I am and what you know, what my whole value system is about? So there is just so much to employee value proposition that, you know, companies need to actually focus so much more time and articulating it so that talent out there knows that, you know, if I'm going to a set agency, this agency speaks to who I am, and I know that I'm going to grow by being part of that organization.
Yeah, and obviously, just to expand on your comment, thank you, Lebo. It was very detailed. It's not just a thumbs up of what we think or what we want our agency to be. There obviously has to be processes, implementation that comes before that, so that when you do appoint a person, know the right person for the right job at the right time, when they of everything that you have said is your EVP. So if you don't have that, you know, you're selling water, you're selling air to valuable. Now, Zani, my next question, I think you're very passionate about analytics, and but I want to hear from Zani. So once we've covered this, so we've done the EVP, we've done the headhunting, we've got the right person in the right job. How do we know that our processes are adding value? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think I got the gist of your question, Lebo. I'll just repeat it for the benefit of those who may have lost you. So I think what you're asking is how to know that our recruitment processes are adding value, and you know that we've actually done a great job in our hiring. So once we've partnered with professionals like Lebo, how do we evaluate that? And I think we have, as I said, we've spoken about evolution. When I see the impact measurements we've introduced in HR, traditionally we've looked at your efficiency metrics. We've looked at, are our recruitment practices so efficient that they're making sure that we're finding people quicker. So we tend to measure how long did we take, how long did our processes, how agile are they? Can they actually help us find those people quick enough in terms of when the business needs those people? The second thing is we tend to measure costs, and I think that's important, and that needs to continue. You can't invest in HR practices anymore that are not digital, that are not efficient, and that are not going to maximize your bang for your buck. So when you're partnering with professionals like Lebu, they know that quality is going to be important. So that's what you need to add as well. So whilst you're looking at how long it's taking, how much it's costing, am I getting, the experiences right? Do people find that, when they engaged with your agency, they're believing that they're making the right decision? Because from the time that they start talking to Lebu, that's where the EVP starts. And so you've got to measure experience as part of, checking in on those processes, whether they're working or adding the value that you like. But I think the ultimate one that we probably need to focus for more and more is the quality of hire, because that's going to tell you, have I got the right person on board? And within 3 months, that's a metric you can start measuring. And it's a combination of subjective elements and some quantitative. So yes, it is about the interview with the hiring manager. Are they starting to see the things that the candidate promised? Are they starting to see the value that they were, that attracted them to that individual? So you've got to measure that as well. And that's why researching skills, data skills are going to be very important for HR professionals. You've got to be able to understand, how do I get the right questions to the hiring manager, so that I get that data that I need to understand the impact of that particular HR process. So I think it's a combination of those factors, but I'm starting to see that quality for hire is going to become more and more important, and you measure it 3 months on, a year down the line, you'll be able to see performance. So you'll start seeing, is the person delivering? Because that's the reason why you said this person was talent. Are you seeing that as they come on board? And you can see that 3 months, you can start seeing that, and 12 months, you can measure that. And then from a cost perspective, you do want to measure what people are saying, rookie turnover, which is, if you were a new person, did you leave within, before the 12 months, and that would definitely tell you that you went, something went wrong, if somebody is leaving your organization within 12 months of joining.
Thank you very much for that. And I'm glad you touched on the rookie turnover issue, but also the quality of hire, because I think with many companies or even agencies, we get into a space where, when somebody who is competent joins, we don't hold our part in making them feel part of the organization. Can you tell me the importance, or can you share with us the importance of actually going through a proper induction program and onboarding? Maybe let's start with the difference. Natasha, can you give us the difference between induction and onboarding? And then after you're done, Zani, you can take us through the importance of actually doing induction and then onboarding for a new hire.
So I know why you're smiling, Lib, because we had a discussion about the analogy that I would use to describe the difference between the two. And I think so if you can bear with me, let me give you an example rather than just an explanation. So if you imagine the process of buying a plane ticket and getting onto a flight, your onboarding process starts from the minute that you buy the plane ticket until you reach your cruising altitude, when you are well on your way to your destination. And everything that happens in between, so the email that you get confirming that your booking is right, it tells you the time you're supposed to arrive at the airport, what kind of baggage is allowed, where your boarding gate is, all of that sort of stuff. And then you get onto the plane, they show you to your seat, you sit down, there is a safety process So they start to tell you that these are where your exits are. If you smoke, this is the consequences. That's induction. That's orientation. It is literally placing you within the context of the organization that you're going to work in, and everything that happens around that, getting you up to your cruising altitude and making sure that you are fully performing in your job and getting to your destination. All of that stuff over those first 3 months that Zani spoke about is the onboarding process. Now, in the context of a new hire joining an agency, it starts from the time we sign that contract until the time they are a fully performing and contributing employee within the organization. Now, I have to say it this way because in this analogy of an airline and a trip on a plane, there are a whole host of people that are involved in that process. It's not an HR responsibility alone. You can equate the captain of that flight to your CEO setting you a route strategy that says we're going to turn left over Bloemfontein, and then we're going to head up to 35,000 feet, and then you're going to get to your cruising altitude, and we should have you landed safely in Durban by X time. That's your business strategy, and that's the CEO's role in your onboarding process, is to set for you a course of where we're going and explain to you what your role is going to be. And in the case of taking a flight, your role as a passenger is to sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. When you get to cruising altitude and somebody asks you in that post-onboarding interview, so how was it? Your criticism or praise of your employment experience, you would have actually established in those first 90 days. Did they keep the promises that they set me when Lebo spoke to me and told me about this EVP and what I was getting myself into? Has my experience matched up to that? So I think, Zani, from there, it segues nicely into what it is you're going to talk about of how it sets people up for that productive employment and contribution experience that they're going to have.
I love your analogy. I've never actually used it, Tash, so I missed the conversation with you and Lebo. But the reason why I like it is you can start building onto that analogy, because some airlines just do the hygiene factors. They don't just tell you about say, health and safety. What they start doing is they look at the experience as well, and they tell you about your destination. They're actually now looking at travel as a whole. And when we're looking at onboarding, we're moving beyond the compliance aspects. And I know those are important, because without the hygiene factors being addressed, your people don't get paid and they become miserable, and you're starting to have problem children, and you don't want that. So hygiene factors, non-negotiable, must be a tick box that you include. But that's not where it ends, because you're going to have to start thinking about, how do I integrate and assimilate this person into our culture? So you're going to need interventions in that 3-month process around making sure the person understands, how do things work around here? You know, meetings, where do I go for what? So it's very important that you set people up for success. So that's the mindset of onboarding, is what is it that I need to do? Because remember, you've invested, you've paid Lebo, you've done a whole lot of employer branding initiatives. The person lands, and the last thing you want is for them to start saying, I made the wrong decision. And that's one of the things you look out for. So then you start measuring the experience. So the culture piece is important. The clarity piece is important in terms of, what is it that I'm here to do? Very quickly, you need to start articulating the goals and objectives for that individual, even if it's short term, but they need to know upfront, this is where I need to be going. Because if you're leaving if you're leaving it to chance, the time to productivity, which is the key measure here, isn't going to be the numbers that you want to see. You'll find that it's actually going to take your person far longer to contribute. And so within the 3 months, you want to see the person starting to be more and more independent, and seeing that actually I'm enjoying it here, I'm excited, I'm feeling supported, I'm developing, I'm learning, I'm engaged, I want to keep going. And I think the other thing that's important is that people are actually wanting to talk about careers up front, actually. I think traditionally, certainly in my generation, you had to prove yourself first. Well, people come to your organization and they want that conversation within the 3 months. So it's part of the onboarding journey. Talk to me about, where am I going to go? What are the career paths? What is it that I need to do to be able to get to where I need to? And of course, tell me what I need to deliver. If you can say to me, I want you to deliver within the 12 months, 2 years before I start moving on, that's great. At least we're having that conversation up front. So I think that building for readiness, for success is very important in terms of onboarding. And then I think to measure the impact, look at time to performance or time to productivity. So from 3 months, you want to see that this person is adding value. I mean, that analogy of 100-day plan has been used for executives. I think it applies for most, if not all, people that we bring on board.
And you know, Zani, I think that's so important.
Thank you
because
very much,
find-
Zani, for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lebs, yeah, you
Yeah.
find that like a lot of times, especially like in agencies,
Yeah.
you get, hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, you find the situation where like, let's say there is an HR manager or no HR manager. And I think it's so critical for line managers, especially in agencies that don't have an HR person and they don't have those sort of processes in place. That first day when the person lands, knowing that they were expected. So there is a plan of action. There is a program to say, this is what's going to happen on the first week, the third week, the sixth week. And this is where we're going to assess before the 3-month probationary period to say, this is where you have not been able to achieve. And these are the training and development programs that I'm going to put in place, because this is how so many agencies end up at the CCMA, because they can't prove that they did put that sort of program in place. They did do the counseling, they did do the training, they did put the supports in place. And without that, honestly, like you said, Zani, it's setting up somebody for total failure.
Yeah. Look, if it sounds, and I know if I just...
And
So Lebo, the only thing I can add is if you want to put your commercial hat on because you're finding this is too much, make it digital, automate it. A majority of what we're talking about can be automated. And as I said, the human element then becomes where you spend the time.
Yeah.
And you might find it's really literally few meetings for some stakeholders, etc. So I think the digital bit we mustn't forget.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lebo.
Yeah. I love how you all, thank you very much. I love how you guys all made mention of the fact that people want to know what to expect. And I think ultimately because we are in the work environment, you're expected to deliver or to perform to a certain level. Now, there is this concept or this word, Lebo, I'd like you to touch on it actually. So we always talk about, in the industry, we always talk about KPIs. So this person doesn't have their KPIs. What are the KPIs? We need KPIs for them to deliver. Please take us through exactly what KPIs are and how they influence, a person's performance.
First of all, I think we had a good start with this discussion talking about the company strategy, because, basically the strategy speaks to all of this. So KPIs and KPAs, because I think there's that, like, KPIs are your key performance areas, and the KPAs is the key performance. KPIs, key performance indicators, and KPAs, key performance areas. So the business objective and understanding it is interlinked to everything that happens within the organization. Goals and objectives are set at organizational level, and then they get cascaded down to maybe your receptionist. So the KPA refers to the general areas of outcome or outputs for each role, each and every role within the organization. So they speak to how we plan and how we deliver in order to achieve organizational goals. So what they do is that they clarify what every person's role is. They align that role to the organizational, business, and a strategic plan. They focus on the results rather than the activities that the person will be performing. But also they communicate the role's purpose to others within the organization. So they are much broader, the KPIs. And when you get to your key performance indicators, they then, by definition, link back to the achievements per department within an organization. So a KPI is measurable, for one, that's a starting point. You use it to track how an individual is performing within the organization. So when somebody says to an HR person, give me KPIs for this role, it's not something that is done by the HR manager. It is a collective effort that starts off from discussing the strategy with the line manager and the employee, where the employee knows where they fit in within the organization and how their role then impacts the strategy in order for the strategy to come to be realized. So they have to be specific in a sense that they must be very clear about every single KPI and how it will be measured and why it's important. They have to be measurable. So you need to be able to measure every single thing that that person is saying. So if you're saying that, for instance, let's talk about a position that everybody would understand, like a PA, for instance. If you're saying that their key performance areas is to answer telephones and respond to emails, make travel arrangements, administer tasks and errands, and they do diary management as well. For each one of those KPIs, there needs to be weightings. And HR can't decide on those weightings. It's something that you sit down with the line manager, the person that's going to be in the role, or people that have previously been in that role, where they say, in order for me to be able to do diaries for 5 managers, this is the amount of time that it takes me to do it. So the weighting that goes with diary management is informed by that. I'm not sure if I'm making that very clear. So your KPI, you need to be able to be specific that this is what you will be required to do. This is how we'll measure it. This is how we will know that you've achieved it. And then also it's time bound. You know that if part of your role is to run errands, how much time are you going to spend on a weekly basis or on a daily basis to go buy coffee, to go buy stationery? So that's the difference, that one is more specific, one is broader.
Thank you for raising that you know it's not HR's responsibility, because ultimately you know the HR person is a specialist in what they do. They cannot be specialists for every single role in the organization. It would be impossible. So for example, you've got, and I'm giving an analogy now, given you've got the person in the organization, they're performing, they've got their KPAs and KPIs, they understand them fully. However, after probation or during probation, they're still not meeting the expectations or their delivery expectations. Natasha, what do you do?
So I'm going to go back to where we started from and speak about what a people plan should deliver in the context of a business strategy. And I think one of the most important things that a people plan should deliver in the context of the execution of your business strategy is a performance management platform. So now we set the goals, everybody's got the objectives, everybody's got a job description. How do we manage the execution? And so your performance management process starts off with, let us align our senior leadership to their responsibility for the performance management of their team. And let us set for them the objective of effectively managing the performance of their team. And then from there, we roll out to, okay, so what are the objectives, as Leb said? So what is it that we expect from each role within our organization in order for us to deliver against the business strategy for that particular function? So how is Natasha going to contribute? How is Zani going to contribute in the role that they play in the delivery of that strategic objective? And then we measure against a KPI. Now, for a lot of agencies and a lot of organizations, performance management becomes this conversation that we have at the beginning where we're saying, these are your KPIs, this is your KPAs, these are your KPAs, these are your KPIs, this is how we're going to measure it, this is your weighting, now go. At the end of the year, we have another conversation that now is awkward, and it is it's a stressful thing for everybody else. It's a stressful thing for a manager, it's a stressful thing for an employee, because number one, the objectives have shifted somewhere throughout the year. The priorities and strategic objectives have also shifted throughout the year, and we haven't had this progressive conversation about how things need to shift and what development is required along the way to keep you contributing. So first we set the objectives, then we have to do these progress reviews. So we need to have these conversations about at least once a month, at max once a quarter, at worst once a quarter, but preferably once a month you're having a conversation about how are you doing against the work that you are required to deliver. And this is not a conversation about performance or poor performance management. This is a conversation about keeping you focused on what it is you need to deliver. It is a conversation about what support you need in order to stay delivering. And it is a conversation about the developmental requirements that are going to keep you delivering and pushing you forward, contributing strategically to the organization. It's also an opportunity for an employee to give a manager feedback about how they are doing in managing them and their process. Now, Zani alluded to the digital tools that you can have or you can use in these conversations. My advice is, and what I would do, what I would suggest is that you cover off digitally over the phone, via email, the things that are measurable, but where you've got challenging feedback to give, you keep those to a face-to-face meeting and you keep your conversation short and concise. You document that progress as you're going through. When you get to that performance review process, there are no surprises. We all know where we stand. We know what it is we need to go and do. And then what comes out of that performance review process is input into where we are for the next year. What it is we need to improve about our processes, what it is we need to look for in our development plans. We are then very clearly able to say, well, actually we're short of a skill here across our entire organization. There's something that we strategically need to close in our organization because we're now taking a whole organization view of our performance. And so that in broad strokes, so in four points really, is what a performance management process is and what it should deliver for an organization.
I love that. Thank you very much, Natasha. Now I want to go, obviously there is extremes, which is why we've got a labor law, right? So I want to understand, and I'll ask you again, Tash, because I love how passionate you are about performance in the workplace. I'll ask you, with a person who is not performing, obviously the onus then is on the organization or the agency to upskill that person in the role before you actually, move them along. Can you take us through that type of performance management?
Okay, so I think as HR professionals, and I'm going to start with HR professionals, we call in the prefect when something's not working. And in a lot of our organizations, HR is the prefect. And for starters, a poor performance conversation where you need HR is when it's really at the last legs. The point of managing performance is to actually improve performance. It is not a punitive process. It is actually it should actually be a developmental process. So in the context of managing performance that is not where it should be, don't delay the conversation. Keep the conversation to as close to when the incident or the performance that's not matching expectation happens. Keep your conversation as close to that point. Be clear about what it is the person did that they need to improve. Be clear about how long it is they need to improve that process, and be clear about what support they require from you in order to improve that particular thing. Now, in the context of that poor performance conversation, as a manager, you're going to have to learn the skill of giving feedback and receiving that feedback, because sometimes that performance is substandard because of you, because you're not managing in a way that is appropriate for the individual. And when you leave that conversation and you delay that conversation, it ends up being in that performance review process. We used to get along so well and now we hate each other. And the employee walks away from that conversation going, my manager just doesn't get me, and they ignore me as a result. So it is a skill that you as a line manager, wherever you are in your organization, you need to learn. And I'm going to say this, I don't know how many business owners are on the call. Your performance management process loses credibility when your senior leadership is not held to the same level of accountability as they hold every other manager within the organization. It is not for a select few levels of management. It starts right at the top and it goes through every level of the organization and everybody that has an accountability for people management.
I fully agree with you, Tash. And I see that we've got like Gidi,
Yeah.
who's one of the people that are on here, that leadership development is so important because,
Yeah.
you know, you read so many articles where you hear that people leave, don't leave organizations because of organizations, but because of managers. So it is critical that managers are fully equipped to manage people and to manage performance in such a way that you don't lose people in the process due to bad leadership.
It's true, absolutely true. I see Ronnie's got a question here asking, how can HR equip business leaders to prioritize this as one of their KPIs and not relegate it to HR when things have gone wrong? So Ronnie, I'm going to say to you that if you keep fair performance management as a leader's own KPI, that they need to manage their own KPI being fair performance management, it does not become the responsibility of HR. Your responsibility is to make sure that when things have gone wrong, they have documented each step in the process. They have gone through the conversations, and you're there to support the employee and the manager through the offboarding of an employee who has not been the right fit for the organization.
Correct. So Zani, you know, you're always my go-to person when I'm feeling as the human capital person in an organization that I'm not being heard, or you know, everyone is coming against me because all these things that you want us to implement, Lebo, they are so tedious and they take time, and we got these things, and you always have the voice of reason, because I think, you know, HR people, without the support of their senior leadership team or the exec team, we're literally alone. And I know with every single HR person, whether on the call or on my panel, we've gone through that. We have gone through that. So can you take us through some advice that you could give to our human capital personnel or professionals who are going through that and maybe have gone through that? What would you say to them?
Yeah. I think we need to remember that you are a professional, and remember, as a professional, there's standards. And I think, you know, you've got finance people, they have to uphold standards. You know, we never expect finance people, you know, you don't cut corners when it comes to finances. You look at legal, there's legal professionals. They also have compliance aspects. They also have ethics, matters of ethics, integrity, etc. That's why you hire a legal professional. People get qualified according to a certain standard. You go to IT, there's standards, there's BOPs, all of that. I can go on. So I think for me, if we start understanding that as an HR professional, there are certain standards that you probably need to have at the back of your mind. That's number one. Because as soon as you compromise that, you actually compromise the industry as a whole in terms of HR, and it becomes a brand issue. You know, people then start downplaying the profession and think that firstly, anybody can do HR. That's number one. And number two, that you do create mistrust in your organization, because you'll hear people say, oh, by the way, HR works for business or whoever. And so I think you also need to be mindful that ethics is going to be more and more important, no matter how global we become, no matter how you know, innovative we come as businesses. Ethics is probably going to be one of the things that's going to keep coming back to us. So I think that's one of the things that might trigger why CEOs or organization want to change certain things about HR. And I think the third thing is to reflect and remember it's not about being popular. HR is probably one of the most difficult functions to kind of perform, because you're often going to have to challenge the most senior people, right from a chairperson. I remember working with a chairman of different committees and being able to have to debate certain principles around reward, etc., etc. So I think if you're not able to apply your mind in terms of how you're going to influence and how you're going to challenge, I think you're going to deny yourself the opportunity to be a respected professional. And I'm going to go back to those competencies I mentioned earlier. I said, you know, you've got to be able to influence, problem solve, you've got to have a strategic mindset. And you'll find is when CEOs invest in those competencies in their HR professionals, they'll find that they'll get somebody who's actually able to solve your problems. And we'll be able to hold up, you know, that discussion we've had, Lebo, in the past when we were learning to be HR professionals when we were younger. We were told that ability to hold up the mirror, you know, telling, you know, Tash, telling the manager what they don't want to hear, but being honest with them so that they are winning. Because remember, at the end of the day, you want to see the organization prosper. I don't want to be a professional that was responsible for a tanking organization. I want to be part of that journey that's about success, that's you know, seizing opportunities to see the business grow. And I think that's why it's tough. And I just want to appeal to HR professionals to remember the easy job is to take the order and say, yes, sir. How high must I jump, sir?
Yes.
And that to me is what's going to discredit us as HR professionals. I don't think CEOs, to be honest, majority of them want you to tell them what they want to hear. You may think so because you may not have the confidence to actually see, I actually have to show up differently, and I actually have to challenge. They respect you ultimately, trust me. I've seen it in a number of organizations. Yes, we do have few delinquents. I won't take it away from anyone, but majority of the time people do want to do the right thing. So it's very important that you're partnering correctly. And if when you leave Lebo, that CEO that didn't want to partner with you because you were doing the right thing, they'll remember you, trust me. They'll remember you because they'll come bump into others that are not like you. So I stick by what I'm saying because I've seen many testimonies that actually are given by CEOs themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I want us to touch on training because, you know, we're talking about these skills that an HR person needs to have. We spoke briefly about leadership development, and I'm not going to delve into leadership development, unfortunately, in the interest of time. But I want us to talk about development because I think it is such a key piece within business in general. Lebo, in our industry, we don't have much relationships with our CETA. Are we at fault? Are we losing out on anything? What are we missing?
You know, I think it's not just your industry per se, Lebs. I think it's just getting a proper understanding what the CETA is about. And I think most companies really, they lose that by viewing CETAs through the lens of compliance. In as much as like compliance is important, there are like three key things that I say are important in terms of like getting involved with your CETA. And I'm gonna start off with like the maybe what may seem least appealing, in that, you know, the reason why CETAs were put into place was to ensure that we could like upskill people and ensure that there's job opportunities in the country. So I think from like a perspective of contributing to the larger economy, when you put learnerships into place, you are contributing towards upskilling people and creating employment. But the second one, which is like a huge benefit to any organization, is that you're able to grow talent in line with your business strategy. So instead of just like, you know, saying you'll wait for somebody to to intern somewhere else, and then you bring them on when they've acquired the skill. You're able to ingrain them into your organization. They get trained in terms of your culture, your values. They get to understand your business strategy, and you develop them for their larger plan in terms of like succession planning. But one which I think is critical and that companies probably don't look at is that, you know, companies who've registered with their CETA and they have executed the training according to plans, including all the approved learnerships, you actually stand to claim back up to 70% of the portion of the skills development levy that was paid over to SARS on an annual basis. And for me, if that's not a motivator, nothing else is, because that means that you actually never have to pay for training. Yeah.
There's no excuse, Lebo. There's no excuse for not upskilling your people now in this day and age. Really isn't.
Yeah, and also,
I always
sorry,
say
Liz.
that, you know, when we argue.
Yeah,
Yes.
so like, you know, one other thing that I didn't mention is that, you know, skills development is really the only element on the BEE scorecard where you do not have to spend your own money. So it really, I think, is a motivator
Correct.
for every organization.
And I like that, because that also is a measure that you can use on how well your HR people are contributing to the bottom line. Because if you look at it from a typical view, you would have a training budget, right? And the training budget would come from your profits. Now, if you're not using your own money for training, that money automatically goes to the bottom line. So, you know, that also could be a measure that you use for how well your human capital people are doing. Now, in pursuit of a certain level or, you know, a certain type of prestige where we're saying we are upskilling our people, you know, some organizations just willy-nilly throw training around. You go to training, you go to training, you go to training, you receive training. And Natasha, I want you to take us through what the actual structure is. How do you actually determine who needs to go to training, what type of training they need to attend? And then Zani, I would like you to finish that off with the return on investment. How do you measure return on investment on training initiatives that have been run?
Okay, so thanks for that one, because I think this is where I really hold HR professionals to a high standard of work, because this is where business strategy and people plan actually marry. Is what do we need to do to achieve? What do our people need to know in order to achieve, one, our culture ambitions for this organization, two, our skills ambitions for this organization, and three, our growth ambitions for this organization? So what do we need our people to know? And then go and do the work. Go and sit with the managers who, please, have done the performance management process, which includes a development plan, and sit and say, okay, how are we going to close these skills gaps? Is training going to be the solution? Is coaching and mentoring going to be the solution? Or is expansion going to be, and challenge going to be the solution to close these gaps? Sometimes it means a person just needs to move into another job. Sometimes it means they just need to move within the organization in order to meet their career growth plans. All of those things go into your training needs analysis. And once you've got that training needs analysis in place, you're going to start to oftentimes see pockets of commonality of where you need, of what you need to close. And then you're spending your money on the things that are actually going to drive your organization forward, are actually going to make an impact on your business. So I'm not just sending people on training. I mean, I've seen some workplace skills plans where anger management has been the training course that is required. And I ask myself, why? Why do you need to train somebody on anger management using money that's not going to be beneficial to the rest of this business. So for me, that training needs analysis is so key, and that gap analysis from where we are now to where it is we want to be in terms of growing our organization and moving everybody forward, and then also meeting their own career ambitions. Because now you can say to an employee in that development conversation, this is the gap we're going to close. We're going to close it. You're going to go on this training. I'm going to mentor you through it, or I'm going to pair you with somebody else. I'm going to put you on a project that's going to help you to actually practice those skills. And then this is your next career move. So it builds that engagement platform. You as a business leader actually get to know the people in your organization really for what they are good at and what they're not good at as well. And you start to build an culture of an organization that is really transparent around development, is really transparent around what it is they want for their people, and is also using the money that you spend on skills development to actually benefit your organization maximum.
Thanks, Tej. Zani, ROI.
Yeah, thanks, Tash. That's really great. I can't, overemphasize or emphasize enough that development planning part is so critical, because once you decide that I'm going to go the training route, that's where you're fighting with, it's the money conversation. And very often, as you all know, when the companies have to, tighten their belts, they cut the training budget. And often that's because training has not been well thought through, as Nashash is saying, because I've seen organizations, even now with COVID, in the COVID-19 context, they've decided that they're not actually going to cut their training budgets because they've done it correctly. They've realized that there are capabilities in this business that we need to ensure that we have an adequate supply of to deliver what we need to deliver. So I think that development planning piece is so critical. But in terms of measurement, there's different types of measurements that you can actually look at. And I would suggest look at all 5 of the ones that I'm going to mention. The one is do measure the experience of the training. Because if you don't measure the experience, people are not going to promote it. And actually you're going to have people not, signing up for that opportunity. Yes, you've agreed this is the development focus, but the experience has got to be right. So get the right professionals to train, design it correctly, make sure it's good quality, because that's what you will measure in that experience surveys that we do. I think also you do want to impart knowledge, so test for knowledge, Lebo. So I would say if people are going to be spending 5 days out the office, I think you'd want to test, what has that 5 days been about? It hasn't just been about the experience, because often we stop at the experience, the training. I used to be a facilitator once, and people used to say, rave about, the training. In other words, it's so nice going to Zani's trainings, and that didn't satisfy me. That's not what I want. That's not where I wanted to stay. The lunches and, all of that, that's not what it's about. So I think do measure the knowledge. I think also look at impact. So it's going to be important that once people are back at the office, if it's one of those out of office interventions, what are the shifts you're going to start seeing? If I'm a sales rep or a marketing executive, whatever intervention I've gone to, even a leadership intervention, do the 360. Once you've gone on those fancy programs, 3 months later, are we seeing the behaviors that were trained in those interventions? And you measure that impact through observing behavior, doing 360s. Tash, when we looked at frontline sales staff, you go into the retail spaces and you observe those individual.
And you're wanting to see those shifts in that performance. Yeah,
absolutely. You want to do that. I mean, in the good old SAB days, they used to have specialists that would actually assess you as competent. You would be given 12 months to be competent in your job. Every single person, every job rather, would be married to assessment standards.
And the file of evidence was this thick.
Absolutely. And you knew as an HR professional, I'm competent. I got signed off. It was such a big deal. And
it was huge.
Exactly. And that used to roll up to boardrooms there where they would analyze the competency levels of our people. Because we said as organizations, if people have these competencies, we're going there, we're getting to that,
right
that Tash. And then the last one I just want to measure is return on investment. You have to look at bang for buck. So you are going to have to quantify You know, am I seeing the sales numbers that I want to see as a result of sending my sales people to the sales academy? When I'm sending my marketing professionals, am I seeing those quality brand plans that they translating to business development opportunities that I want to see? Because you can quantify those contracts. And I believe in agency, you know, it's about getting the contracts as well. So you want to measure those quantities of those contracts, and that'll help you understand that you've actually been on the right track with regards to the investments on training.
I love that. And I love what you said about, you know, measuring behavior, because I think specifically in our industry where we are seen as just the HR people who cannot get involved in business, who potentially cannot understand business, we are very often left out of really, really crucial meetings, even just a client presentation where you're sitting in. But in that client presentation, you and I know, and you know, all the HR people on the call, that you've actually been trained to assess whether the training that I took you on, the presentation skills training that I took you on, is actually adding value or has actually shifted the behavior or not. And if not, then we need to give it another approach. So I think very many times, because of the lack of knowledge of our business leads and maybe our department heads, and them not allowing HR into the business space and not talking to them in the business language, we set people up for failure, and then we don't know how to fix it, which is really, in this day and age, it shouldn't be the case. I've got so much that I want to talk about in this little time. Okay, so I'm going to leave the development piece for now because I think we've touched quite a bit on it. I want to go back to the performance management piece. So once you've understood how people perform, Natasha, what do you then do with your non-performers? What do you do with your high performers?
So I'm going to go really quickly here because I think we've got like maybe 3 minutes left to talk. Yeah.
Yes.
So your high performers want recognition for their performance. Okay.
Right.
You don't have to pay them lots of money. You need to give them a challenge. They are high performers because they want to learn, because they are ambitious, because they want to progress. So you need to give them more challenge. You need to give them ownership. They want to be in charge of what it is they're doing. They want to know that you trust that they can deliver and they're going to work harder. You as a line manager, as a people manager, you want high performers in your team because it gives you time to deal with the performance that you need to shift. With those poor performers, you can now spend your people management or your development conversation time on the performance that you need to shift. The performance of your team is a reflection on you as a manager. So you want your team to be performing, and that means you have to be strategic about how you spend the time in your day on your performance. So you want to set up your high performers for success so you can focus on the ones that actually need your attention. It means you're going to have to learn to mentor and coach. It's not a stick and a carrot approach. You're going to have to spend the time with those people to understand what it is that's holding them back, and then systematically work through supporting them to either develop those skills or shift them into roles that are better suited for them. Nobody is not good at everything. Everybody is good at some things and needs to develop in others. And sometimes it's a culture fit, and then you have a conversation about actually moving this person out of a team into another team, into a more suitable role. I know we don't have time to talk about talent grids and all of that, but that's sort of an HR process that you would use in order to place this. She goes, I know, she's shaking her head over there, but I've really raced through it, and I hope that I've answered your question, Leb.
You have. I think most of these will, especially the strategic initiatives that really add impact to a business. I think we need to have specific webinars dedicated to them. Zani, I want us to touch on quickly. So Natasha mentioned that when rewarding a person, it's not about throwing money at them, or your high performers. It's not about throwing money at them. And there's a concept called total rewards. Can you take us through total rewards, which obviously includes money, but what else does it include?
Yeah, I'll be very brief because I know, Lebu, you also want to bring in an expert on it, but I can talk at a principal level on total reward. So we're starting to see over time that total rewards is now about a blend of monetary and non-monetary rewards offered to your employees. so that they can generate the business results that you want. So yes, it is about compensation, but it's also about the benefits. It's about the growth opportunities. It's about creating a motivating work environment. Because remember, when you use the non-monetary and monetary, it's about reinforcing the positive behaviors that you want to see, the positive contributions that you want to encourage from your employees. And I think what's important though, is to be able to balance total rewards or compensation, which is part of it, with competitiveness, consistency, transparency, flexibility. You want to give employees maybe a sense of ownership. So we're seeing the ownership schemes coming through, because that's about making sure that people feel that they're part of your organization. They're actually contributing to the profits. And I think over time, this area is going to be challenged even more to be far more flexible, so that you're giving staff more flexibility and you're individualizing your offerings, and you've got to be able to respond far quicker to business objectives through this part of HR. So I just want to emphasize the non-monetary elements are very important as part of total rewards. So you'll find that recognition programs will often come from the space. Incentive programs that we're using in sales staff is also quite important. And remember, we're seeing different generations enter the workplace, and they are looking for different types of incentive schemes. So long-term incentives, very much, I even think the silent generation, but the younger guys are saying, I may not be here in 3-6 years. So if you're telling me you're going to give me 600,000 in 6 years time, I ain't gonna be here, So I want the 3-month, the quarterly incentives making sense. So I think I would advise HR to start looking at the generational elements as well, which some organizations have started to do as well.
Cool. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, last section. I think we need to cover this. So, Lebs, I'm going to ask you this question. So, and I'm glad Zani has unpacked it, because I don't think we've been approaching, from most people from the industry have been approaching total rewards in that way. So, there's a lot of people who say, oh, but this person, they resigned and then we counter offered them, or we even exceeded the amount that they were leaving for, but they still left. So, can you take us through the different types of leaving, a person leaving, and why, in your view, when people say they are leaving an organization and they're asking for your assistance, what is their reason for wanting to leave?
For one, and I think I'll get back to the question that you asked, where people say, like, I've given the person more money and I don't understand why they're choosing to still leave. People don't necessarily always leave because of money. As we said earlier on, one of the reasons is that people will leave because of managers. So if you've got like a bad manager where there's poor management, poor communication, and it could be that manager as well is disengaged, and as a result is filtering down to their staff as well. But there's also issues like lack of trust and autonomy, where people are not given that opportunity to actually get on with their work, where they're micromanaged on a daily basis, even though they know that they are competent. There are times where people feel overstressed and overworked, but this also boils down to communication and not having the right training and support in place, where they can't communicate directly with the line manager, or the line manager just doesn't get it. And the one thing where I'm finding now is a major complaint with people that are in the market, because of the remote working, boundaries now are being blurred. There's no work-life balance for people. You're finding that, managers now, because they feel that they need to know that you're working, they are keeping you in meetings unnecessarily, which then impacts on your performance, because you're sitting in meetings when you're thinking, actually, there's a project that I can be working on, or being pulled into a meeting that you don't necessarily need to be in, and you could be doing something that is a lot more productive than sitting in there. And another issue is just that it's uninspiring or unhealthy work environment, So people need to be inspired. You know what Natasha was saying earlier on, if you've got an account manager who, because like the younger generation now, they're really studying. You get somebody who comes in, is an account manager, has got an honors degree in marketing or even a master's degree. Those are people that you can actually pull into strat sessions. So the strat department can use an individual like that when they're putting together a strategy for different clients. So you need to ensure that you know all those things, you look at them. But like finally, just like in terms of the money, guys, it's such an insult to throw money at somebody when now they're leaving. You know, if you did not value my worth all along, why is it that when somebody else recognizes it, then you think that it's okay to throw money at me? So that in itself becomes an insult, and it's a case of, you know what, somebody has seen what I'm worth, that's where I will go. So in a nutshell, that's it.
Thanks, Lebo. Last question. I think when we were chatting at some stage, Zani, you made mention of this concept of buy for now. I love that so much, and you know, I'd like you to unpack it a bit for us so that we can get an understanding of what buy for now is, because you know it is something that is now trending.
Yeah, I think we've seen this trend, as you say, Lebo, when you talk about the life cycle no longer ends now. So my time at this particular agency is going to happen again. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that, you know, right now, agency X can't offer me what I'm looking for, but somebody else can. Let me go and learn. Let me go grow elsewhere. When I come back, I'll be even better. And hopefully I can come back. So it's buy for now, because I'm going to grow. I'm going to come back, be better than I was before. And so when we look at talent and offboarding, it means it's got to be another good experience. You know, you're not saying to the person, I want my laptop back, I want my phone back. You're saying, where did we go wrong? I'd like to improve. I'm sorry I couldn't do what, you know, I couldn't catch the issue earlier. What is it that I can do next time? Can we keep in touch? Still stay as part of the family? And that's really what it is in a nutshell, Lebo.
I really love that, because it assumes that you know, it definitely gives hope for the future, that, you know, I can still come back to this agency, and that means continuity of business. So guys, that was my last question. Unfortunately, we can't even get into the discussions and answering questions and responding to comments on the chat section, but thank you so much for joining us. I will be touching base with you after this, because I think there is still a lot to unpack from what we've just covered today. But I think with what we've covered today is enough to give some people context. And then I think the upcoming webinar. So in my previous webinar, I was begging Mate to give us, to allow us to do webinars every month, and she's agreed. So we're going to be having webinars every single month. So I'm going to call you guys to unpack further what we touched on today. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate you and the knowledge that you're always willing to share.
Oh, it's been a great
Thanks
pleasure.
for having us. Thank you.
It's
Thank
been
you
a
very much for inviting us, Liv.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Ladies.